I do have, I'm going to call the meeting to order in just a minute, but I have from, we know Jeff is not going to be here. He's recovering from surgery, but unable to drive for a few days anyway, so he's not here tonight with sincere regrets and I suspect frustration on his part. There are a couple of people who aren't going to be here and a couple of people who are going to be late. To respect everybody's time, I don't think we'll make it home in time for the debates, but let's see what we can give it a try. All right, calling the meeting to order at 6:30, and public comment first. Anybody? No public comment? Okay, chair's report. I've told you where Jeff is, and he was going to make some comments on 3B, the go and loan option. You've got a piece that came in your packet, and I think I won't try to summarize what he was going to add to that. It was his comments were basically going to underscore that the go it alone option is simply not an option, and any piece of it that you would like to try to get additional information on, we can try to supply it, but it's a no option.
Can I carry on?
Yes.
I haven't seen, on the go it alone option, which on the go it alone option, I agree it's not, desirable, but, I haven't seen a trajectory of the schedule and costing in terms of if we did go that way. You know, what would be the priorities? I'm sure there's a way to figure out what would need to be done. Sort of. Has anybody done any work on that, do you know, schedule?
Kevin, you have. Now that I think about it, it's not in here, and it probably should be.
Yes, there was an analysis that was done identifying, based on the initial work from the Castle Booz engineer, the scope of work and the estimated cost. And we laid that out in a particular order and trying to get a timeline on how long it would take to get that work done. When we initially looked at that, we thought we could do it over 10 years with an expectation that it would minimize some of the assessments to member towns, while in maybe not, perhaps not being as disruptive to the school operations. However, when we took into consideration some of the required triggers that would be impacted by the cost of the work that would require us to bring up fire code compliance, ADA compliance, it compressed that schedule because we only had 3 to 5 years after hitting a certain point of expenditures that we have to get that work complete. So the timeline was close to 5 or 6 years. We've been sharing that information at our local officials meeting, and I'll make sure that our school committee.
They actually have it at the table in Ford's report. It was included.
Oh,
First, okay.
great.
It probably should be attached to Jeff's report.
He was gonna just deal with that
At some
separately, so,
point.
yeah.
Dave.
I guess what I'd like to point out is that I sent out, I think to the officers that Assabet Valley Technical High School is now completing a $62 million renovation of their school in place. They kept on teaching courses, teaching classes and so forth. And they seem to be successful. They're gonna have a reopening or grand reopening this month. And they've done it for 1,100 students. So I feel a little bit concerned that the tone and tenor of the documents that I've seen is basically a position that will never get any MSBA money if this doesn't come through, is current. Is that the position?
I wouldn't comment on Jeff's, he's not here to comment on this.
Yeah, but I think to answer Dave's comment, I can't comment either, we'd have to talk to MSBA. As of right now, if we don't vote to approve our current building, we'll be out of the pipeline. Whether we get back in or not depends on the proposals that we would put forth. The documents that have been worked, we didn't hire any engineers, we didn't hire anybody. It was done by the volunteers from our committee. If the communities decide they don't want the $58 million and they decide they don't want a new building, then we're gonna have to go ahead and hire architects and engineers and do all of that work. I can't tell you what the exact number will be, but our best guesstimate, and it's a guesstimate at this point, is about $100 million.
And we should point out that the committee is comprised of a number of very highly qualified professionals who do this kind of work for a living, so they were doing it without charge, but.
But they also did it using the existing reports that are on the website and used the existing numbers that are in those reports. They didn't manufacture any numbers, it all came from those reports.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, before we move on, I wanted to let people know, just a heads up, that we may be asking you, or will likely be asking you, to attend 1 or 2 specially scheduled meetings between now and November 17th. The reasons for which may become clear as we're going through the rest of the agenda. And finally, since I am not used to being chair of this committee, if anybody sees me making any mistakes in following the rules, please feel free to wave, turn on your mic and say point of order or whatever. I want to keep this on the straight and narrow. Okay, move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. At your table, there's a handout in terms of the staffing report, which was included. We have 12 new staff. Although we've had 20 staff retire or resign or other reasons for leaving, at this point we've only hired 12 back. We don't anticipate hiring everyone's position that has left. In addition to these here, our special ed director has resigned, and I've appointed Amy Perot as the interim special ed director. And I anticipate that once we get through the fall and through some of these critical votes with the building project, we'll do a formal search committee process to hire a permanent special ed director.
Could you spell her name? Perot?
I don't.
A-U-L-T.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We have a new nurse starting next week as well, right? Any questions on the staffing report? The second item on the agenda was
I have one question.
Mhm.
Is the former director, sped director on this list?
No. The next item is a pretty interesting survey that was done by the Education Alliance for Minuteman a few weeks ago. There's a letter on page 10 and 11, 12 and 13, and then the summary of the responses from the middle school guidance counselor are there. We have a press release that we'll be issuing after this meeting regarding this report, and I was fairly pleasantly surprised at the awareness of vocational technical education on the part of the middle school guidance counselors, and also their assessment of parental support for vocational technical education. As we've gone through the process of talking with our communities about the building project, there's been a lot of discussion about enrollment and our projections around enrollment, which are, projections. So what are some of the other attitudes and perceptions that could impact our enrollment? And we wanted to get a glimpse of that. And I was very pleased with what we're seeing. And I know that George Committe, who's the director of admissions, has been seeing a market increase in interest in coming to our career day or showcase day. I have the name right there, showcase day. Showcase day is the day when all the students who are interested in coming to Minuteman, and that interest has been gauged after a presentation to the middle school, and our staff collects cards and information about who wants to come. I know in Acton alone, I think last year we had 13 or 14 kids come visit. Previously, we've averaged about 25 or 30. And this past week, George collected 179 data cards on students who want to come and visit Minuteman. And by the end of the month, we will have visited almost all of the high schools, middle schools, I'm sorry. And we'll have a number that we have to plan for on November 12th. So we want to have a problem in planning for too many kids coming to visit on and it seems that we're on that trajectory, so I'm pretty pleased with that work and the work that George has been doing, and really the whole staff as we've been working with Mark Perna, the national kind of enrollment, marketing, recruitment, and retention expert. It's been very satisfying. Mr. Majerus?
In the minutes, it was stated that there were 31 additional students from outside. Could you elaborate on that or expand upon that?
I'm not sure what you mean, 31 students from outside.
Well, it was in the minutes that said that that had enrolled in new students this year from outside. What does that mean? From
Jeff?
non-member towns?
Not necessarily, those are transfer students, not necessarily in grade 9, just students that transferred into Minuteman from grades 10 and 11.
10 and 11?
10 and 11, no seniors, we don't accept senior transfers.
And do you know how many of those were from member towns?
I don't offhand know.
Thank you.
And the showcase day, that's November 12th?
Yes.
That's a Thursday?
Yeah.
So it's in the evening?
No, it's all day.
That's something we would be able to go to?
If you're interested in being here on that day, let me know and I'll guide you in how you could observe.
It's a very interesting report and very positive. It's very nice to see that the schools are collaborating with families and with Minutemen. Just looking at the chart, and I could figure out what, I knew it, I could read what contacted, what, I don't know what total percent means.
That's the percentage of, there are 42 middle school guidance counselors in all of those middle schools. So that represents 50% of the total population. And the 68%,
That I understand, I'm not, what do you mean by the total population?
there are 42 guidance counselors and
Okay,
21 respondents.
got it, all right, thank you, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions on that? It's good information and it should beef up some of the conversations we have in our hometowns.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The showcase day. What are the students are coming from the 8th grade mostly?
All 8th graders.
All 8th graders. Are they bringing themselves? Are they providing?
Jack, you want to give a little overview of
Yeah, the
Showcase?
showcase, it used to be called tour days.
Yeah.
We used to do it in over a 2-day period, now we're trying in a 1-day period. But it's all the students that are interested in taking a look at what Minuteman has to offer. About 10 years ago, we used to have every single 8th grade student in our 16 school districts come and visit Minuteman. And that was close to 4,000 students. And it was, I can tell you from experience, it was chaotic because most of those kids didn't want to be here. They took it as a day off from their middle school. And it really disrupted the students that did want to see a program. So now over the past several years, we've geared it down to students that are interested in seeing Minuteman. So, but like Ed just pointed out, they're gonna get dropped off here by a school bus. We go and pick them up with our buses. We bring them here. They'll be here for a total of an hour and a half. So they'll get to see 2 of their top 2 programs, which again, George has already collected that data from the visit. So they'll get to see just 2. They're not gonna see all 16, but just their top 2 for a half hour each. And then they have a half hour debriefing before they go home, and that's about it. And so we'll collect some data when they get here. And it should be a great day. We're on track to have several hundred students here that day.
And just to build on what Jack's saying, the teachers showcase their programs in a way that's very active, very hands-on. There are other students from the program that are there with the teacher, helping that presentation go along. There's 5 stations or more where the students are actively engaged in something, and they rotate around to the different activities. And we want to leave them with not having done them all, so they have this desire to come back and try again. And we're taking, as this is new for our staff, in a way, we're taking some time this week where we're having an early dismissal,
Thursday.
and we're having all the teachers practice their showcase presentations, and we have other people going around evaluating them and giving them feedback with a rubric that we're using, so that everyone gets a chance to practice, they get some feedback, because for many, you know, it's not a one-shot deal, but it is a one-shot deal. You know, you gotta make it, as someone used to say, you know, if you can catch things on fire and blow things up, you kinda got them, you know. So some shops are more conducive to that than others, but it's really engaging. We have some of our ambassadors, we have, I don't know how many we're up to for ambassadors, but these are students that, you know, love their program, and they talk to the kids about what I love about Minuteman, what I love about this teacher, about this shop, and it's kids talking to kids in a way that has meaning, I think. The other thing we do is when the kids leave, you know, is we tell them, please bring your parents back to the career day, which is on Sunday, November 22nd, is it? And so we're hoping that the kid goes home excited. We sent the mailer out to the parents and a personalized mailer to the student. And we told parents what we're gonna be doing. And so it's this what we call drips, you know, this continuing frequent contact, but effective and sort of connected each to the next thing. And after career day, there's some shadow day opportunities that come up, and then, you know, we have a deadline of February 1st for admissions. It's a preferred date. Applications will be acted upon quickly in regards to the process, and we're really promoting that widely with our middle school guidance counselors and with parents.
Oh, sorry. There's one more question. The Sunday, the 22nd, is the Sunday before Thanksgiving. Was that considered a good idea, or?
We looked, Ed will tell you, we looked at a number of different Sundays, none of which, for people that have families and respect their free time, there are no Sundays that are great, but we thought the 22nd was the most appropriate, because again, what we wanna do is we wanna capture those kids' interests from being here just a week and a half ago, prior to that date, so that they come here with the full head of steam. One thing I wanna point out that Ed spoke about, this isn't just a George thing. You know, Mark Perner has helped us tremendously in, if you do have an opportunity to be here on that day, and you talk to Ed and find out how you can get involved, you know, we have specific students that are gonna be in the building on the showcase day. Not all of our students will be here. Our academic teachers have been paired up with CTE program instructors to make sure that there's a constant flow of good communication and information going out. So the reason why I bring that up is, you know, I've had a few phone calls from parents, you know, deservingly so. Why the early release day? You know, wasn't on the school calendar. What's going on? Why do we have to focus on this new recruitment and retention? And we have to. And it's a game changer. And we all need to be involved in it. Academic teachers, students, CTE teachers. So I think it's great. The momentum that it's building up outside of these walls is just, it's great. We had a professional day in class Wednesday or Thursday, and it was just, staff's pumped up about it.
Alice.
I noticed on the marquee outside
Yeah, we brought in a company to help George out with admissions, that's helped set up that online application process. And we've already received, I think, pretty close to, I think, half a dozen applications online, which people are gonna say, well, it's only half a dozen. First of all, we just launched it. Second of all, I think almost all those applications came from students that we haven't even gone out to do a presentation yet. I think 5 out of 6 of those applications were from girls that were in our Girls from STEM camp, which again, last year they wouldn't have had that opportunity to go online and apply. They would have had to wait. So it's great, yeah.
All right, so again, if there are school committee members that are interested in being here on the 22nd of November, contact you.
Or the 12th or the 20th.
Well, I'd say if they want to come on the showcase day, they should talk to Ed about how they can be involved.
Okay. Ready to move on?
Okay.
Still be here.
I just, I'm gonna hand something out here. It wasn't that. I just wanted to give you an update as to Module 5. Module 5 in the MSBA process is the local approval of the project. We've had a number of meetings, some special meetings, and a number of discussion about the options available to the school committee. And someone asked me just to kind of simply lay out in a timeline what those options are and I'm gonna say this is from my point of view. I'm not making any recommendations to you. Those of you that have talked to me about it know that I'm very skeptical of being able to get town meeting approval in 16 towns, and perhaps another 12 or so debt exclusion votes as well. But, so this is just to look at the timeline that we have to us, and you see in the middle that first red box there, November 17th is a milestone date. We have to vote to send the schematic design to MSBA, and that's based upon the certification by the owner's project manager, Mary Ann Williams from Skanska. She has to certify that the district is within the budget that MSBA approved back in August. So and we'll talk more about that. No, we're sort of running into the next report anyway, but that's kind of okay, right, Ford? So under 16D, there are 2 options. This is all theoretical. The December 1st, the school committee could take a vote contingent upon approval of the MSBA of our Module 4 submission, which we wouldn't have that approval until January 27th. But our lawyers have told us that you could take a vote before that approval was final, contingent upon the project not to exceed that amount. And then 60 days from that vote, towns that wanted to disapprove could hold a special town meeting and disapprove the project. If no towns hold a special town meeting, by February 1st, the project will have been approved by virtue of non-disapproval. The second thing the school committee could do under 16D is the day after the approval by MSBA, theoretically, Minuteman could vote to bond and send it to all the regular town meetings. My estimate is that would take 110 plus or minus days. It'd have to go to all 16 regular town meetings, which Lincoln is having a really early town meeting this year. I think it's the 19th it begins, middle of the month. And again, one town votes no and the project fails. The other option, as we have discussed many times, under 16N, again, the school committee could vote contingent upon approval by MSBA Module 4, not to exceed 144.9 million. The district could vote to hold a district-wide ballot within 30 days of the first town voting no, or not be silent to that, or a date certain, and it could be in the future, at any point in the future. So you have really a lot of options, and I think from my view, the conversations that are happening amongst the selectmen and amongst school committee members and selectmen are all very, very positive. We have had a lot of information shared, a lot of candid conversations. You all have had candid conversations with your selectmen. And I really believe that as we get closer to the 17th and understand where we're at with the project itself, and we understand what certain towns would need to have, I think we may have some of these options become more palatable. I should put it on here, but 16D needs a simple majority. To go under 16N, we would need 11 votes. Not 2/3 of those attending, we need 11 votes to go with a district-wide ballot. So I'm just kind of bringing this to your mindset, to the forefront. And I think it helps to think about these things a little bit creatively. They're not etched in stone in how it happens. There's some flexibility. Our vote, according to our attorneys, can reflect the will of the district in regards to the flexibility and the dates and the deadlines. So there really is a lot of opportunity for some compromise and consensus building, regardless of the pathway that we go. And I'll say it again, I do not believe we'll succeed in all 16 town meetings. I don't. I think we're going to be faced with some other decision, and I'm hoping that we can continue the discussions with folks. I know there's a meeting in a few weeks in Weston on the 28th. And there'll be some other things that we'll talk about a little bit later that will add to the openness, I believe, of our member towns about these options.
Not necessarily to answer right now, but I continue to receive questions from people who would like clarification relative to the status of Wayland's move for withdrawal and the timing of town meeting or ballot votes on the project. And the attorney who was at a recent meeting sort of touched on it, but we didn't actually put that specific question in front of him. And I think by the time the rest of the meeting comes up, that might be a good thing to be able to respond to.
So, what's the question?
Interweaving, if there were if you're going, I think the reason the question comes up is if we try to go the town meeting process and Wayland votes in opposition but says we're out, or votes, it doesn't vote, in which case they would be deemed to have approved.
Correct.
Exactly the timing of the outstanding debt, are they responsible for it or
Yes.
not responsible for it if it has been approved but not issued before their ultimate departure, I think is the more.
The simple answer is Wayland is a member until it's not. And they are, even if their article, or our article, to allow them to depart, was approved by all 16 towns, their exit would not be final until the commissioner approves it. And it occurs 1 year following the commissioner's approval on July 1. So if the commissioner approved it, and let's say it went through all the town meeting stuff and through 2016, the commissioner would approve it by November or December, I'm assuming. That following January, June 30th, 2017, Wayland would no longer be a member. However, if the school committee, if the district had approved bonding during that period of time, Wayland would be on the hook for the full amount of their debt service, as is written in our current region agreement.
Thank you. Yes, Sharon.
I'm wondering if there are any other towns that are planning to vote to move out of, looks like they're gonna be trying to get out of it.
None that we've heard from.
Anybody out there?
And remember, you have to approve that vote.
I understand,
Yeah.
yes.
No warrant articles to that effect have been proposed.
I was, in that regard, I was interested in Dover's letter that we just
Right.
received.
I'm sorry, was the question on which town meeting, which special town meetings are entertaining that this year, or?
Yes, the question is, are there any other towns that are considering,
Placing the article on the warrant?
No, any other towns think.
Oh,
to
withdrawing,
withdraw
excuse
from the
me.
district?
Article,
Yes,
okay.
sorry, yes, to withdraw.
Question, I want to make sure I have this right. January 28th, MSBA says, go ahead do Council 5.
Mhm.
The school committee at that time could have a warrant article put on the town warrants requesting approval of the project.
Mhm.
In a regular town meeting,
Yes. We would have to prepare that warrant article in November probably because of the, we have placeholders and everything.
correct, have placeholders, but the actual wording could go after January 28th.
Yes.
And that's when the school committee would take the vote. Then, could we at the same time, if I understood this, also take a vote to go to a district-wide vote if a town turns it down?
That's our understanding, we could.
That's what I thought.
It might have to be 2 votes.
It could probably be 2 votes. Okay, so then, assuming that passed, we could say in that motion that we, after 30 days or whatever the number is, that we would then do a district-wide vote.
Yes,
So that sort of covers us both ways.
yes.
Just wanted to, okay.
What exactly is module 5? The voting, all the voting?
Local approval.
Local people, okay.
Sharon? Jennifer?
The, regular town meetings, I thought somebody had one in the middle of June.
Yeah,
Okay, so it couldn't go to regular town meeting. If they're regularly scheduled town meeting, they'd have to have a special town meeting. Right.
it's up to the district. Like I said, you could have some flexibility there in the language of the vote to allow all town meetings in their regular town meetings to address the warrant article.
I think what we would get to, if that were the case, and if Belmont, which is the one that meets or has voted typically on Middlesex, Minuteman articles in June, if we got to that point and they hadn't moved it up, and they were the last one out, this school committee could reconsider and take another vote in May to do it within 30 days by ballot.
We have, perhaps, that part I don't know about, because if you take another vote, all 16 towns have to approve that other vote.
Now, to go to ballot, the towns don't.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
If Belmont
But
were
we
the
would have
last
to-
town,
Yeah, no, that, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
you're correct, yeah.
We have quite a number of the towns that have town meeting after May 1st. So you'd either be keeping your fingers crossed, or you'd be moving forward with a ballot vote before
Right.
all those. There's probably 6 towns in the district that meet after May 1st.
But if we had a no going into that May 1st,
Well, then it's easy, yeah.
then it's,
Alice,
Have all the towns indicated when their town meetings will be this year?
Yeah, we pretty much know when they start, their traditional start dates. The other thing I should mention is that the Acton selectmen voted unanimously to approve the new building and a district-wide ballot. Yes.
and they weren't asked to do that, they just
They
did.
just up and did it.
Yep.
And the Concord selectmen have suggested the alternative combined solution of asking town meetings to have a non-binding advisory discussion and vote, but go to the ballot. Assume that we would go to the ballot.
It had nothing to do with it, it just
Pam was great, she got it done, yeah.
No,
blew my mind.
been having a lot of discussions with folks.
Yeah, they were very, very supportive, and they were
Very
not
smart
all
group of
supportive
selectmen.
when we started the discussion, so. Just bringing it up to your attention and for your thought about it, and, you know, if you have some ideas, send them to Liz and I and to the officers. Because I believe that in November, I would like to have, for you to review, potential votes of the school committee to accomplish different things. And we'll have them all vetted by the attorney, so they are what your town meeting would see, or your selectmen would see.
Ford, or has every town scheduled a townwide meeting?
I'll get to that, but the answer is no.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Okay, and we'll move right into school building committee report.
I'm gonna have Ed, just start off with module 4. I've been involved with it, but
There's,
what's going on in module 4?
yeah, module 4 is schematic design, which is moving along. The school building committee identified 4 or 5 individuals who were, I guess the best way to say it, invited to participate with the administration and the design team at the offices in Foxborough, sometimes at our offices here, in the design. And I can say that the design has become much more efficient. It's become slightly smaller. There are some spaces that were skinnied up. We've taken to heart some of the recommendations of the school building committee about different aspects of the building that need to be accommodated. For instance, the original design only had 2 elevators. It was suggested strongly by a couple on the school building committee that we have more than that. That the design currently has 4. I'm not sure if we can accommodate 4. Other things, there's a green roof that has been accommodated. It's being moved to a better location. We've had to meet informally with the planning board in Lincoln because we know we're non-conforming to the current zoning laws in regards to height in both ways that we calculate it. So we'll be talking with the planning board formally again on October 24th. And we've made some adjustments to the design to accommodate the zoning requirements in Lincoln, and also to match the topography, as it steps up and it steps into the campus. We also have a multimedia engineering program, which has a theater space, which is non-conforming, which is but it takes up less than 1% of the roof now. We've done some things in regards to security, where there's basically one entrance. We had the bus folks in to design how bus drops are done, how parent drops are done. They've redesigned the parking lot, so we only have to build one bridge across the stream out there. It really is it's a concentrated effort to keep the costs down. And I'm pretty confident we're gonna be less than that 144.9, but it might be 144.8, so, at this point. And we'll know more this week. Thursday, we're going to Skanska's office in Boston to do what they call a page turner. The plans are at that point where they have all the consultants, and basically that means the structural steel people, the HVAC, the plumbing people, other construction, energy people, and we just go through the plans as they are at the moment, so that everybody's on the same page, because in a week or two, it goes to the estimators, 2 independent estimators. And so they each get the same set of plans, and they come back with a price. And then we see where there may be discrepancies in that price, and we resolve those discrepancies and move forward. We're hoping to have and I should say, I mention this again, all along the way, staff and students have been involved in the process. We had something last week or the week where we had the advisory committee members in from each of the program areas looking at the plans, writing suggestions, redrawing how the layouts are gonna go, what kind of equipment needs to be in there, what their dimensions are, what the power requirements are. So we're getting right down to the nitty gritty. Teachers are looking at, what's the teaching wall in the area, how do you want your room? We need to have rooms that are flexible, that can be adapted to different teaching styles, different learning styles, and in some cases, different programs 20 years from now. So I've learned a lot, and I'm down in Foxborough a couple days a week, all day long with the team down there. Last week they lost power for 5 hours. We were not in the dark, but it was getting warm.
That happened at the exact moment that I walked in the door, the power went off, so it had to be my fault. But it was literally, I opened up the door, and the power went out. And it was out till 7 o'clock that night.
That's kind of a high-level overview. I don't know if you have any questions about that.
I just want to add that, Ed gave a very good rundown. And he and the staff have been very much involved. But I will say that, just in case the question comes up, under Ed's directive, I think mine also, we are trying to figure out ways to reduce the cost. It is a very tight building being built in a very difficult place. And it's difficult because of the environmental aspects of the place. And there are a lot of pieces that are going into it. People say, why isn't it just a rectangular building? Well, it can't be because of the environmental aspects of the place it's at. Plus, when you're building this kind of school, you need to have, for at least in some of the shops, big open bays that are going outside. So I will tell you, there have been up to 20, 25 people in a row working on this project. And Ed has been there the entire time. I have not been there the entire time, but probably 70% of the time. It's a lot of good, hard work in a very tight time frame. So he's involved, when he says he's involved, the students, the staff, the faculty, everybody, believe me, he has been. And the advisory committee. I was very, very impressed with the advisory committee's involvement in looking at the space and the time that they spent. And Pam, you were a witness to that.
Very impressive.
So, Module 4 is progressing, and let me go to my report, which is distributed at the table.
Can I say one thing before you go?
Yeah.
There are 2 ways students are going to be involved in this. The environmental and horticulture kids are actually staking the building and doing high-flying balloons to show the height, varying heights of the building. They're doing that over the next few weeks. And the engineering kids are actually going to be building a 3D model of the new school based upon the actual BIM plans that the architects are finalizing next week or so. We're going to use our 3D printers and actually build the structure, so it's going to be pretty cool.
In the so-called charge to the estimators, is part of the charge to say that, do you see any ways in which we might be able to save money on this building, or do they just purely estimate what's put in front of them?
The narratives that are put in front of them are what they have initially to work with. And the discussions around, reconciling the differences, that's when we have those discussions.
I want to bring your attention to, first of all, as you look at that handout, the Skanska calendar, which is the calendar that we are following for Module 4. And I also want to bring your attention to the last page of the document, which is our district meeting schedule that we have. the Skanska, these are the meetings that go on that Ed or myself, and/or myself are attending. The key meetings that I think you all need to think about is on October 19th is a school building committee report, meeting with the design team. At that time, we're going to see really the first draft of what the schematic looks like. We're gonna start seeing the building, we're gonna see the layouts of all the classrooms, that's pretty much done. We've seen that, Ed's worked on that with them, where the classrooms are gonna be. We're looking at the spaces that's populated by furniture, fixtures, and equipment, so we're starting to look at that in all the spaces. That meeting on October 19th is one that, I don't want the school committee to come up on November 17th and say, oh, we don't know anything. You've got to engage yourself at this point in time, and coming to these meetings is important. So October 19th is the school building committee meeting. You're welcome to attend and see that meeting in action. And then on November 9th, there's a school building committee meeting, again, extremely important, because at that one, we're not only gonna be looking at the schematics, we're gonna be looking at the cost estimates. So that comes right up almost to the 17th. There's gonna be a meeting, between the 9th and the 17th to go over those cost estimates and the schematics, and then again, a working meeting in Foxborough on the 17th before we all talk about it. We've talked about some reasons why we should probably have a school committee meeting somewhere in that period of time. How we're gonna fit that in, I don't know, whether it be a weekend or what, but trying to, so when you walk in the 17th, it won't all be new. But it won't all be new if you come to the building committee meeting. So I really urge you to consider doing that. Then on the 17th, there will be a joint meeting of the school building committee who will vote to recommend to the school committee, who will vote to recommend to MSBA. It will be submitted that the report, Module 4 report, which is, you remember Module 3, that document which was about yay thick, well, the same kind of document will go forward to MSBA on December 1. So that document will be finalized after our vote between then and December 1 by the design team, primarily under the direction of Mary Ann Williams. It's submitted on that December 1 date to the MSBA for their board meeting on the 27th. If it's like Module 3, we will be having a couple of meetings in between those dates to talk to them as they prepare for the board of directors meetings.
Is it the, vote of the school committee is just majority for this event?
So those are the dates that are going as we know them. This document does change weekly or so, and Liz, I think, does send it out to you if I ask her to. So you've seen this document before, and you'll continue to see the updates. On the last page is the meeting schedule that we've asked to have. We had 3 meetings with our town officials. A total of 93 people attended those meetings. That includes presenters and everybody. You have a breakdown in here of the types of people that attended. The meetings went beyond my imagination in terms of the attendance. To have that many people who were engaged was, I think, incredible. We went through the slide presentation that you have here. Both I did that, Jeff Stullen helped out, and Kevin helped out. We went through that. We talked about the going alone option, which in detail, and all the handouts that are in here we went through. And then that was about a half an hour presentation, and then about an hour was spent with the group, asking questions, whatever. I mean, there was a freewheeling discussion. I would say, I think I'm right in saying, pretty much approval that we need to do something. I would say pretty much approval that a new building is the way to go. I would say the only item that was really discussed in more detail was around enrollment. Keeps on coming up, but we discussed the enrollment, we gave our reasons for the enrollment, we gave the facts that the MSBA has endorsed the 628, and won't do under 600, but that continues to be a discussion factor. But I think, as I recall, and Steve, if you're gonna come in, I think that was really the biggest discussion point throughout the whole thing. The purpose of the meeting was to go through the process. We went through the process in detail. But it was amazing to me. We had, the selectmen, it was very helpful having school committee members there from our school districts. We had some superintendents there, which we found very helpful. So I think it was a good meeting. It's just, and as part of the process, we will be doing the same meetings, exact same meetings in the various towns that are listed there. Because now what we're trying to, we've reached the town officials for the most part. We're really trying now to reach citizens. One of the things that I heard about when the Sudbury had their meeting is, well, if you went to a district-wide vote, you're excluding the people out of the discussion. Quite the opposite. We are going to including them no matter which way we go. Because town meeting, they need to be included. So we're trying to get as many citizens as possible. So as you set up meetings, and you can see those towns that have a variety of citizens, the more the merrier is very important. We're going to have meetings after, once we move into Module 5, we're going to go back out. And then we're talking about the schematic plans for the building in detail. We're talking about the pricing in detail. That's all going to come out in detail as we go through the approval process. But these meetings, I think, are important. I'm very appreciative of those people that have already scheduled them. But you asked the question, Jennifer, has all the communities signed up? No, they haven't. They have a tight window to do so, but Dave asked it, we have a tight window to do so, but we're gonna make it happen. We can go into December having these meetings. It doesn't have to be, just before the 17th, but the more the merrier. And the more we can get on local television so they understand what they're gonna be asked for from their decision-making process. What have I left out? Dick?
Just a reminder
On the 17th, that's gonna be a key meeting, and everybody, I would think, would wanna be here for. But again, come to the building committee meetings, because you don't wanna walk into the 17th saying, well, I've never heard of this project. Come and be educated, because your selectmen, your finance committee people have all been very much engaged so far.
What time is the meeting?
on the 17th. I don't think we've set the time.
It says 6 o'clock because of the building
6
committee.
o'clock, 6 p.m. because we have the auditor coming at that time, so the votes would be probably that portion of the meeting.
I'm wondering if there's a building committee meeting a week earlier on the 9th, might it be worth polling members to see how many school committee members could attend that meeting and post it as a joint meeting?
Well, you know what, I don't think it should be necessarily a joint meeting. I mean, yes, if you have a majority there, you have to post it, and I think you probably should automatically post it to the school committee for both of them. But I think this is really gonna be a chance for the building committee to become engaged in this process.
So if we have a special committee, school committee meeting, you're looking for a date between the 9th and the 17th?
Yeah,
Okay.
and the closer you get to the 17th, the more useful it's gonna probably be. And, I think I sent out an email to me because I'm gonna be away 4 or 5 days in there. 16th works for me, but,
Okay, I also wanted to say, report, for the town of Concord, Kevin and I attended a finance committee meeting on October 1st, where we went through basically the state of the presentation of the building at that point in time. And that was recorded by our local cable station and is being played. But I still would like to try to schedule a meeting specifically for citizens. We'll try to get it before the 17th, but it may not happen until December.
Concord is unbelievable. When you look at the number of people from Concord that come to these meetings, Yeah, 2 selectmen, 3 finance committee meetings, 3 school committee meetings. But when we had our meeting in town, I think the entire town showed up from a point of view of the people that are involved in town government, but also citizens. I mean, Concord was very engaged in this process because they went through, as Concord Carlisle did, they just recently went through the MSBA process and you get it. I
With a
always
couple
have
of
been
trip ups that we
I
don't
did.
want Minuteman to make.
Concord is, to me, a very exciting place. Yes.
Sure.
Hi, first of all, Lincoln had 4 people here, not 3, as is indicated, because I am not mentioned under this. I was there, that's not funny.
Bless you.
So, I just want to put it out there.
Yeah.
Much smaller than Concord. I want to say that on October 2nd, we in Lincoln got a letter that was pretty surprising to the selectmen and to me, that Minuteman, the school is, as I think you said, Ed, that it's not going to be able to meet the zoning requirements in Lincoln. And the zoning requirements in Lincoln. And in fact, that 1% of the roof that's gonna be really high is 70 feet high, which in Lincoln is a pretty significant height. But also that the location of the property, now there's 45 acres, I think, of Lincoln property, and another 20 or 25 acres that's in Lexington. And from the way I'm reading this now, in this letter that we got, the only place the building can be built is so close to Mill Street that the 2-acre parcel that we thought we were gonna get for affordable housing, we can no longer get. Or can no longer
We're
be
getting
granted.
into executive session
So they-
material, so we can have a more robust discussion about the Lincoln issues in executive session.
Oh,
Why?
why?
Because, well, the reason we're going into an executive session is to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and so the chair declares.
Or we'll declare when we get there.
Okay, well, in the zoning portion of my comment,
What's your question there?
What
well, it was,
on the Dover amendment?
it was a shock, I think, for the selectmen and for me. And I called our, Peter Sugar, who's on the school building committee, and he said he didn't know that, that the school was gonna be forfeiting, that they were forfeiting, that they were not gonna forfeit their building privilege, and that they were not going to be complying with.
School committee hasn't voted on it yet.
Right, but, well, perhaps, but according to this letter, it looks like that's the current plan. And I think we were surprised that, we got a letter that you didn't get, Alice, that, I don't know if that's what you got.
I'm just wondering if we're veering off of the agenda.
I believe we are.
I think we are, and I think we'll talk about it in the executive session.
Okay, well, it does go to support though, I mean, that's all.
I understand,
Okay,
but I think it is getting into executive session, so.
okay,
Which we are gonna talk about tonight.
Yes.
okay. Zoning is executive session?
The whole question of the relation to Lincoln.
Okay, then my final question is, in terms of the cost analysis, we've got the cost analysis at either at full capacity or relatively full capacity in terms of students. Have we gotten the numbers for if we don't make the full capacity, you know, if we only have 300 or 400 or 500 students in district, out of district, have we looked at different scenarios of that and gotten those numbers?
The answer is yes, and Kevin has those, and he, at our meetings, we also discuss those.
For,
Yes, what we've discussed is what we're gonna go over under my report, which is similar to the report that you saw at the public officials meeting that we held. The question that I think you're asking is if we weren't at capacity.
Thank you.
We have looked at an analysis if we were only to host 435 students. The administration has looked at that yet. We haven't released those numbers yet, but we have done that analysis.
Okay, so we will be getting those at some future date?
I have shared some of those. It needs a little bit more vetting, but I think it's appropriate that we provide those numbers. We have looked at them.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we leave this topic? Yes, Jack?
I don't know if this is something we talked about in the executive session. It would be interesting to share with committee members this letter, whether we, I know if it's an executive session issue, we don't let it leave the room, but it would be nice to have school committee members get a copy of that.
The Lincoln letter?
Just to be kept.
I don't know what letter you're referring to. What letter are you referring to?
The letter that Sharon just referenced.
Can I see it?
The email from you.
Oh, it's an email from me.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't clear.
October 7th.
This is best in executive session, I'll say it one last time.
Okay. Jack, I think you're up for the principal's report. I should say that with the microphone on. Jack, I think you're up for the principal's report.
Thank you. I believe in front of you, you have a request from Mr. Regan and Ms. Clay to take 8 to 12 Minuteman students to Skills USA Fall State Leadership Conference, which is November 22nd to the 24th in Marlboro.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, discussion. Dave?
How many students will be going?
Somewhere between 8 and 12.
And that's funded by us or just looking at the
Depending
commission?
upon the teachers run the program. We have 8 to 12 officers, Skills USA officers, so we don't know the exact number, between 8 and 12 students total.
And funding, acceptance?
The funding is right there, number 4, which is paid for, school, Kevin can probably talk about that.
Good, thank you.
I think a similar question's been asked about this kind of trip, but if it's only going as far as Marlboro, why is there an expensive hotel? Is it overnight?
The students are participating in leadership training, and the agenda for the students goes all
Oh,
night.
till 11 o'clock at night, some of those conferences, so.
Thank you. Anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? And no abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And the MCAS data?
Mr. Blake will be making their report.
Thank you, I'll do the best I can. I have some slides, I'm gonna turn on the machine.
Would you like some help?
Want me to hit the lights, Bill?
Sure. We have some work to do on our MCAS performance, but we're seeing some trends that we are happy about. So we take this opportunity to share them with you. In particular, we we have historic performance in our English language arts. We also have what I think is significant improvement in our special needs population performance on all three disciplinary areas of the test, English, math, and science. So we're just going to give you a brief run through some of the slides. Ms. Rosen sent out a longer collection of data last week that gives more complete longitudinal information about how we've been doing over the last number of years. Here's some notables. We continue to have a consistent first-time pass rate on all three tests. We've had increases in advanced and proficient in all disciplines this year, which contribute to the calculation of our accountability level rating. We have historic performance in English language arts in the sense that we have 97% of the students are advanced and proficient. That's a 12% increase over last year. And we're very happy about this. The teachers have worked very hard. And as administrators, we've tried to provide, and I think we have provided the resources, the time, the money, outside expert consultation to account for this type of growth. In addition, we've had improvement in every single category in biology. As I said before, we have had a strong special education student performance in all categories and all test subjects on all aspects of the MCAS battle. And we had particularly strong performances by students placed below grade level in grade 9 in reading and math. We assess each spring to determine what would be the most appropriate placement. I think it might be important to give you just a little context on that in a minute. This is what we did for professional development, which I think accounts for the success that we're starting to see. For those of you who are familiar with the expected PARC assessment, the assessment that is going to test alignment to the Common Core state standards, there's a new kind of math thinking that's going to be required of students. This requires the teachers to adjust their instruction, to shift the standards mathematical practice to reflect what we anticipate. We can't ignore the possibility of the PARC exam. I think many of us believe it's a fait accompli. But instructional strategies that promote student thinking more so than I think our students have been experiencing. And one of the challenges, of course, is that we have to teach this way. Whether the middle schools have caught up to this type of teaching yet is still a question. So our teachers have taken this on, they understand the value of it. We worked all last year with an excellent consultant who talked to them about how to adjust their teaching practice. She watched all the math teachers work. She debriefed with each one of them individually and then conducted full department workshops throughout the course of last school year. This work will continue without the consultant. It has to. We've had a commitment to Collins writing in the school for a number of years, and over the last 5 years, we've shown the teachers and students, by extension of course, how to apply the Collins writing to prepare for the MCAS exam. We're also in the midst of a much harder, more acute look at our co-teaching model, which many students have as a prescription in their individualized educational plans. And we're trying to take this we will take this co-teaching model to a much deeper level. We're working with a consultant this year. We'll meet with the teachers 7 times throughout the course of the reviews here today. So this is kind of small, I'm sorry, but I think it was included in the larger packet. This is what we're doing in response to the results that we have. We have strategies in place for students who need to retest. We have a grant from the State Department of Education that allows us to run prep classes on Saturdays leading up to the retest in all the disciplines as they apply. We have 100% pass rate in English, so there'll be no need for a retest there. We have a 100% pass rate in chemistry. We have a 98% pass rate, we have a 98% pass rate in biology. So students who do sign up for these Saturday prep classes, the benefits are usually pretty obvious. And we'll also run these classes again in the spring for first-time test takers for the current 10th grade. We share an awful lot of data with the departments. Part of my job is to indicate where I think the strengths and the weaknesses lie, and they look at those indications, they come up with conclusions, and then we make recommendations to adjust the instruction, and that's sort of what I was talking about previously. We knew we needed to make some moves, and we knew we needed to be a little bit more aggressive with the teachers as far as setting higher expectations. And I think they've started to pay off. We still have work to do. This is just a little context on where the students came into the school. We do these assessments every year. I think it's important to know what the entry points are. We have, as you can see, these are students who just took the test, so the results that we're talking about refer to them. I'll about 44% came into the school as ninth graders were below grade level in reading. At least one grade level or more below the eighth grade level that we should have been at. And about 39% were at least one grade below in math. And we are featuring again, it's our student profile, it's well known, our special ed population is significant. And then if you look at the pass rates, the initial pass rates are down on the left side. You can see that the teachers make a significant difference with these students. The support that they receive, the creativity, the activism in the classroom, this is what produces the results that we see. And that biology pass rate is up 8%, which I think is significant for this discussion. So just quickly, there's a lot of data up here. I don't want to get to the bar graphs in a second, but 12% increase in proficient higher for all students. That takes us to 97%. This is the best we've ever done in the history of the school. 13% increase for students who are in what we used to call a low income status. 22% increase for students with disability. These are the proficient or higher statistics. 28%, as you can see, increase for proficient or higher in Title I, and 7% increase for proficient or higher in the high needs category. 60% of the students that we test fall into the high needs category, which I think is probably the highest in the state. High needs category refers to the major subgroups that you know about, the special ed population, the Title I population, and the economically disadvantaged population. That's just some longitudinal data that shows how we've done. If you look across the top, you see the percentage of kids in the advanced category for English. This was, I think, in the packet that I sent out.
Those are percentages?
Those are percentages. So you can see on the far right, it's 97% at proficient or advanced. This is just a quick look at what we're talking about. There's your 97% versus 91% at the state level. Compared to about 9 years ago, we were at 63%. So it's significant. It's, again, 12% increase over 2014. It's just another graph that shows what it looks like, how we keep pace and actually exceed the state performance in the ELA. In math, again, we increased our performance in advanced and proficient by 4%. 6% increase in proficient or higher for students with disabilities. In math, the students with disabilities exceeded the state average in 15 of 17 math strands. The performance on the short answer questions increased by 20%. This is students not leaving answers blank, students applying their knowledge, students sticking with it. This is what the new test is going to require. Significant amount of perseverance on the part of the students. They can't quit on longer reading passages in English. They can't quit on longer reading passages in science. And they can't quit when they're asked to explain their work and explain their rationale on the math questions. So we're happy with this. Open response performance for special education students exceeded the state average by 10%. That's another significant piece of information. A little more longitudinal data there for the math. Since we have this, this is the, we're keeping pace. We need to continue to improve in math within about 5 percentage points of the state average, 73 versus 78. Our AYP improvement in math came in about 8th place compared to the other vocational schools. You can see we're still not quite at the state average. Students are, coming in. Many of them are needy, but we're making progress. This is an area we still have to focus on trying to keep continuing to improve the math results. In biology, I think we did some significant work. You had a 9% increase in proficient or higher, with a 19% improvement in proficient or higher for students with disabilities. And that takes us to 65%. And 20% increase for proficient or higher in Title I, and a 19% increase for proficient or higher in the high needs category, which again is most of the students that we test. I'm trying to get to the special ed slides here at the end, so I'm going kind of quickly here. You can see that we are keeping pace. We still need to do some work, and we'll continue to do some work with the biology performance. Teachers really embrace the Collins writing as a strategy to prepare the students for the MCAS, and one strategy involved having the students read the questions. Excuse me, that's not right. Read the data. Data are presented sometimes in questions, and we ask the students to predict the questions. And in many cases, they're able to predict fairly accurately what the question will be asking. So they're able to make up their own focus correction areas to make sure that they answer the question fully and completely. In chemistry, I don't have the subgroup information. It's a small group that took the chemistry test. It's about 24 students, 25 students who took the test this year. The subgroups are not reported in numbers that are smaller than 10, but we did exceed the state average in all question types and in 7 out of the 8 chemistry topics. As you can see along the bottom there, typically we have a very strong performance in chemistry. This year we had a little bit of a drop off because we had 6 students falling into the needs improvement category, as opposed to last year where we had all the students were in advanced or proficient. So we'll continue to work. A few more students took the test this year, but as you can see across the bottom, the first time pass rate is pretty high. So we exceed the state average in chemistry. Again, it's not a lot of kids that take it, but these kids do very well. And they're typically among the brightest kids in the school, taking chemistry in the 9th grade. It's a tall order, and they do very well. Now, in the special ed category, I think this is something I just wanted to show you. The proficient and advanced in ELA is at 95%. And this is a significant fact. I think we should be proud of the fact that our students are doing this well. The achievement gaps in ELA are not very wide at all. In most cases, it's between 1 or 2 points between students, let's say, who are Title I versus students who are not Title I. Students who are on an IEP, special education students versus students who are not on an IEP. And they work extremely hard, but the test is going to change, and we have to continue to anticipate the new kinds of questions and the new challenges. You can see that this is our difference between the state and the district. State special education performance level in English is at 67% advanced and proficient. Ours is at 95%. In math, the special education performance is also significant. We have 62% of our students at advanced, proficient or higher, which is an improvement of 6% from last year. You can see the difference between Minuteman and the state average. Same is true in biology, which I think this is one of the more significant points, a 19% jump in the number of students who are at proficient or higher in biology and special education. Co-taught classes, creative instruction, diversified or differentiated instruction in the classroom where you have a teacher who can pull a small group of students who are not doing as well, move them to another section of the classroom, have parallel teaching. These are the 5 co-teaching models that we're trying to, we will encourage and we will make sure that our teachers adopt these more and more as time goes by. I think that co-teaching model has something to do with the strong results that you're seeing in biology. Now, what do we need to continue to work on? We need to continue to work on open response performance across all the disciplines. These are the hardest questions on the test. You have to read material, you have to read a narrative, you have to read data, you have to process that information, and then you have to respond in writing, in your own words, in English, in math, and in science. In the English language arts area, as we move towards a PARCC-type exam, the types of questions for the longer composition and the performance-based assessments, the questions are going to change. Typically, you'll have a question prompt that involves writing about a character that you studied in a piece of literature, or you have something like this, going to movies as a major source of entertainment, write a persuasive essay in support of keeping the discount movie theater open. The newer type of question is going to involve students reading several sources of information, synthesizing that information, and then drawing from each of the 3 sources to make a cogent argument, depending on what it is. Nonfiction will be the expectation. Common Core standards say that by the time the student is in 11th or 12th grade, 80% of what he or she should be studying is in the realm of nonfiction, which is good for us because that's what we've been doing as a technical high school for a very long time. So it's just a little bit, it's the number of sources that students have to be exposed to. If you look at Common Core standards, you'll probably recognize the titles, you just probably won't recognize them as being as difficult at such an early age. Much more challenging titles are showing up in the 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and of course in the 10th grade. More complexity is going to be expected. And just to sort of wrap it up, the math is different. And the math is going to require, it says there, multi-step problems that require reasoning, requires students to take their knowledge and apply it to real and unpredictable circumstances. And they're gonna have to explain themselves. And this is what we worked on all last year, putting more and more responsibility for the learning onto the students. Many teachers around here were extremely strong in their content area, but they need to put more responsibility, and they did. They accepted the challenge of putting more responsibility on the students. So in math classes in this school and science classes, you'll see students at the smartboard explaining their work. You'll see students presenting their analysis and being challenged by their classmates to back up the conclusions that they draw, and that's essentially what the new standards of mathematical practice require. So you're applying your 21st century skills of cooperation, collaboration, communication, creativity, also listening, presenting, and of course, it sort of goes without saying, I know you've been listening to the discussion of how the academy model will affect the school in the future. The more collaboration, cooperation, integration, discussion, and reflection that take part on the part of the staff and faculty, it just lends itself to the direction that we have to go in. So that's about it. If you have any questions, I'm going to do the best I can. Yes, Mr. Chair.
You used the word needy or needy students and so forth, those that have greater needs than math or whatever.
Right.
When we do the intake and they test in order to apply to Minuteman for acceptance, does that become evident within the testing that they have?
Yeah, that was the reference to the grade levels. And we're looking for students who are going to come in, they test in April. That's really sort of 8th grade, 8th month. We set the bar at 7.9.
7.9.
7.9. We said grade level. Students should be able to perform at that grade level.
Oh, in
or higher.
mathematics.
And that's how they get placed into remedial classes. We run a small targeted assistance program, Title I in math. So the students who don't meet that standard are placed into those classes. They receive a supplemental math class in addition to their regular.
So we're bringing in students that we already know have needs, and we're gonna have to lift them?
Yes, and we do.
Okay.
We do.
Alice, I just wanted to say, I think it's really remarkable that, given that the kids are in their shops for so much of the time, that the kind of improvements in numbers that you're seeing in particularly biology and chemistry is just really incredible. The local high schools don't have the shop time that these, that we have here, and yet our kids do so well on these tests. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I'm really glad that the school focuses so heavily on making sure the kids pass and follow up with the kids who don't, because I think it's really devastating for kids when they don't pass these tests. Particularly going back to take it again is very, very hard. So I'm very proud of the school for making such an effort to make sure that the kids don't suffer at the hands of all of these very high-pressure tests. Thank you.
Jack, you wanted to add something?
I think it's important to note that unless the parents disclose during the interview process that the student coming in, if they're on an IEP, that we don't know that. It's not legal for us to even ask the question. So we don't know that until the student has already been accepted here based on the criteria that we get from middle school. It's only then that, once we do find out and they've already been accepted, we send out and do a transitional meeting and find out what those needs are, and then we move forward from there.
So the unusually high rate or percentage of students here that are on an IEP is not because that's something you accept or reject, it's not something you're aiming for, it's just a condition based on the applications you get?
I think that would be the case.
Thank you.
Yeah, but some of that should be determined or identified during the testing process, right?
But that testing process doesn't happen until after they've already been accepted to Minuteman. That testing process happens in May at the new student parent orientation. And in order-
Which testing?
The math,
The
placement testing.
So what are the What's the criteria for acceptance then?
Where we look at the student's grades, discipline report, attendance, an interview, a recommendation, which falls under the state requirements for us as well, so. But we don't know if they're on an IEP unless the parent discloses that.
That shouldn't be a point, I understand that, and I've known that for a long time. I'm just saying, I guess my question is, why don't we test them before May? Why don't we test them as part of the application process?
It's illegal.
It's illegal?
Yes.
It's illegal, Ed?
Can't use those. You can't use, we have to follow our admissions policy. We're not allowed to do that kind of assessment of an applicant. We can only assess on the 5 criteria that have been approved by the state.
So it's by Mass General Law or,
Chapter 74.
great, thanks.
I'm incredibly proud of my staff for this kind of, I mean, you don't see these kinds of results. Through Bill's efforts and the efforts of all of our, department chairs and cluster leads, it's really been a collaborative approach to dealing with the kids that we get. And you can see, we do that very well. So thank you, Bill and Jack.
Jack, did you have a question before Bill leaves?
No, not a bill, I appreciate that. No, I just noticed as I was following along in the slideshow, there were narrative conclusions in this presentation, and the slides differed slightly from what was in our packet. It would be great if we could get an electronic copy of this, so we don't have to pull out those conclusions that you've already reached. I mean, this is great information for us to share with others in our towns.
Noted. All right, I think we're ready to move on to Kevin's report.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is just an update on where we are with the FY 15 financial statement and audit report. When we had originally started the process in the spring, and we were targeting to have the auditors in presenting the final audit at this meeting, having met with the finance subcommittee on September 30th, because our plan. However, there was all the field work for the district preparation of financial statement community letter was complete back in late July, early August. There's some new management standards that came out in ASB 67 and 68 that relate more towards some additional testing that needs to be done on the actuarial studies that are included in our financial statements as part of our OPEB disclosure. So we were delayed in, the auditors were delayed in receiving some information from the Mass Teachers Retirement Board. Mass Teachers is getting inundated with requests from various audit firms to provide this information, as well as Minuteman retirement system. There was a significant cost increase related to this certificate testing work. And so the retirement board asked for some additional information and clarification. That work has been completed. So just an update to let you know that we fully expect that the preliminary report will be presented to the finance subcommittee on November 3rd. And we have Cheryl Stevensburg from Lansing East scheduled for November 17th for the audit. Next item is an update on the fiscal 15 year-end closeout report. The detail was provided on pages 31 through pages 34. At your table this evening, you'll find that there is a one-page summary that notes the revenues and expenditures, budget to actual. Does everybody have that schedule? It's a one-page schedule. projected revenue deficit of about $83,000. We experienced about $211,000 more in regional transportation reimbursement from the state. Our prior tuition amount was a shortfall of about $310,000, resulting in a net of about $83,000 deficit. This was reported to the Finance Subcommittee back in the February-March timeframe, and we had encumbered about $300,000 to offset the potential revenue deficit. The regional transportation money was additional funding that came in late in the spring. In terms of the expenditures, we had about unexpended appropriation of about $893,000, of which $389 of it was salary related, primarily due to not filling certain positions, not filling at least 4 positions, based upon our efforts, as we've explained in the past, continue to try and downsize the staff to accommodate the 628 enrollment target and budget targets that we've established. In terms of the $503,000 of non-salary expenditures, the primary amount was about $258,000 in health insurance, both retiree health insurance and the active enrollment. We've a combination of projecting a 10% increase at the beginning of the budget process and finally seeing that actually come in around 3% plus a decrease in subscribers led to the balance at the end of the fiscal year. And the rest of it's just throughout the operating budget. So that's just an overview of where we're closing out the end of the fiscal year. This will contribute about, we're estimating, with no other adjustments being considered, about $800,000 toward our E&D. We've submitted all of our E&D documentation to the Department of Revenue, and I'm hoping by the end of the month we have that certified. But one of the primary drivers, not the only one, but one of the primary drivers is our operating results for the fiscal year. And just wanted to give you a quick snapshot on that. And again, some of the detail to that is provided on pages 31 through 34. The Finance Committee reviewed this at the last meeting as well, and I just wanted to share this with you. Any questions?
You basically provided this same unaudited information to the Department of Revenue, who's then going to certify the E&D before, in the next week or two?
What we receive is a balance sheet from the auditors as part of their field work. And that's the information that they receive along with some other accompanying schedules and a questionnaire that we need to fill out. If they have any questions, sometimes we'll offer this support information. We are providing them this information as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. The next item is regarding the projected revenue plan and assessments. This was the schedule that you'll find, it's a 3-page schedule starting on page 35 that we've been sharing in our public officials meeting. As Sharon alluded to it earlier in the meeting, this schedule is the model that we've been using. There was an initial model that we reviewed with the school committee in February. Adjustments were suggested. The model in February had a number of different assumptions based upon whether we were going under the current agreement, regional agreement, or if we were going with a revised regional agreement, and it had the different project options. Now that we know that we're working under the current regional agreement, working towards a new school, we've been able to summarize this into a 3-page summary. On page 35, it just gives, in the upper left-hand corner, what we project to be our revenue plan based on a 628 enrollment with 524 in-district students and 104 out-of-district students. We were required to develop a budget as part of our MSBA submission, so we made a number of operational decisions which reduced our operating budget by roughly over $2 million. part of the debt that will be increased as a result of the new school. So we're looking at a projected operating budget of about $21 million in fiscal year '20. The assumptions are listed on the lower left-hand side, and then the assessments based upon the assumed enrollment is listed in the upper right-hand corner, based upon the assessment categories that we use under our current regional agreement. And just a projected per pupil cost of about $24,827, based on this operating budget, is where we see our per pupil cost, which is, compared to our current operating budget, slightly lower than where we're at now. On page 36, I'm sorry, Jack, did you have a question?
Yeah, Kevin, you and I had a passing conversation about this at the end of our last finance subcommittee meeting. And I'll kind of summarize it as my recollection of that conversation, but I also have a follow-up question. This budget, if you look at this left-hand box of $21 million, has $4.5 million of debt service that we don't currently have in our budget. We have a little bit for the ESCO, but for sake of argument, that 4.5 isn't there. So that brings that budget, operating budget down in fiscal year '20 to about $16.5 million. And we're sitting here today in fiscal year '16 at just a smidge under 20 million. So it wasn't intuitively obvious to me how in 4 years we were going to have a decline of that size in our nominal, even from a nominal point of view, much less a real dollars point of view. You mentioned that there was analysis and thought regarding teacher schedule or whatever, and so my question is, I would love to just kind of understand, not in line by line detail, but understand how that assumption of an operating budget that's, call it $6 million or so less, what are the assumptions that are behind that? Because I think this is going to get attention, at least in my community, and I don't want to be sitting there going, humming, I don't know.
No.
It got attention when we talked to the Concord Finance Committee as well.
Sure, basically it was just a ground-up budget approach. We just basically looked at what our needs were, given the number of programs that we're offering and our academic requirements, and we just went through the staffing and identified the number of staff that we would need to operate the school. That's the main driver, and from that, we were able to come up with a reasonable assumption on what our health insurance and our other benefits would be. The other major consideration that we looked at, that we worked with the design team on, is what would we save in our utility costs as a result of moving into the new building. So those are the three main factors that we looked at in order to come up with this. So those are the major drivers, frankly. And then we made some percentage adjustments on some of our discretionary accounts, such as supplies and equipment, things of that nature. We're funding, stabilization account, and OPEB, and continue to do that, but some of our capital repairs of about $500,000 a year may not be necessary under this particular program, as well as some capital equipment that we're trying to start to buy now in anticipation of moving into the new building, so we won't have an outlay of capital that we'll need to assess in year 21, 22, 23, because we should be ramped up and ready to go. We don't see any significant increase in some of that infrastructure until maybe 10 years, 15 years, and depending on technology and things of that nature. But that was a methodology.
I think when we're talking about a new building and more efficient and effective educational programming that can come with it, this is an additional point to make, is that there are things that we can do in a new building that are perhaps possible in terms of educational achievement, but inefficient in terms of cost to get that done in the current configuration.
Yeah, the debt service that we're looking out at FY '20 is a total of 5.233 million. And what is that based on? What's the base number? Is that a 144.7 million?
Perhaps if we go to the next page, on page 36, I can go over the assumptions on the debt.
Okay, well, before we go to that, then I have a question then. This non-member capital fee, if the regulation is voided, then member towns would then be paying that $779,000, right?
Well, to the extent that the regulation is in place, the assumption was made based on how we understand the regulation right now.
And my assumption is that if it fails, that money shifts in and becomes part of assessments.
That's your assumption.
Is that correct or not?
It would be borne by somebody, so I suspect unless there's something that would supersede the capital fee, then it would be borne by the member towns.
Thank
But
you.
right now,
I think,
it's important to note that the regulation is in place and the calculation is based upon the regulation that has been adopted.
and I
We're
would
just
like to
talking
believe that,
hypotheticals at this point anyway.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that MSBA and DESI would recognize that the project was undertaken with that regulation in place as they move forward.
I have one more question. Why do we take out, in this projected per pupil cost, why do we take out debt in $190,000 capital?
It's, when you look at the DESC calculation for per pupil cost, it's standard to take out debt and capital because it varies so much by individual community. So when you're looking at, on the DESC website, what the per pupil cost is, please recognize that it does not include debt, capital, or community service because it varies so much by community.
Capital or community service? And that's the DESI calculation for just per pupil cost?
Yes, if you go to the per pupil expenditure
Yeah.
tab on the webpage, it'll give you the function codes that they include in the per pupil cost. And then you'll see the three function codes, the 6,000, 7,000, the 8,000, that's excluded from their calculation.
That has nothing to do with tuition, whatever, we're just
Just
calculating
on
an
the
average
expenditure side. Yeah.
cost. Yeah, thank you.
Sharon?
Hey Kevin, and just to confirm, this here report, you will be getting something equivalent to this. This is based on full enrollment, so you'll be able to provide us with these numbers.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we're still vetting it.
Yeah.
But you're not the first to ask, and so we have done a version of it. And once we kind of massage it a little bit, yeah, I'd be happy to share that.
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
If I may shift to page 36, it talks about the projected annual debt service. The column reflects what the projected enrollment would be under member enrollment of 524. You'll note that it adds up to 527 because there are 3 towns that send less than 5 students, so there's an adjustment for those communities since they have to pay a minimum of 5. In the lower left-hand box, you'll notice that there's annual debt service. We'll still have a energy service contract that's outstanding. That'll have a few more years left on it, of about $506,000. The projected annual debt service based on the $144.9 million, it's 60% being borne by the district, is $4.7 million. The capital fee offset based upon 104 students paying 100% of the capital fee would be about $780,000 for a net annual debt service of $3.9 million attributed to the project. So when you look at the net debt of 3.9 and the 500,000 for the ESCO debt, it's about $4.4 million. Net debt that would be assessed to the member towns, and the percent enrollment to determine the assessment share is provided based upon the enrollment assumptions. In terms of the capital fee calculation, as mentioned, this is the calculation that we know it to be now. Guidelines have not been released yet on this, but we have had discussions with DESC, and based upon their guidance, we simply take the total debt service of $4.7 million. Based on the 3.5%, 30-year note on a level debt service is provided by our financial advisor, Unibank Financial Advisors. We determine the capital, the per pupil cost of debt just on the new building at about $7,500 per student. That becomes the basis for the capital fee for students that do not have access to Chapter 74 programs that are coming here. To the extent students that attend here that have access in their home district of 5 or more Chapter 74 programs, that fee would be reduced to 75% of the $7,500. But we're assuming that the 104 students would not have access to Chapter 74 programs. If you calculate the 7,500 times the 104 students, it comes up to the $780,000. So that $780,000 would offset the annual debt service for the building, resulting in the annual net debt service of about $3.9 million. Any questions? Yes, Dave?
Kevin, I think at one of the townwide meetings for all officers, or officials from the town, the question, the ESCO debt came up. Has the school made any inquiries about changing that or whatever, or reducing it, or getting it dropped or modifying something?
We're currently reviewing the lease to see what our options are.
Okay, that's as far as it's going at this point.
Yes, at this point, that's as far as it's going.
Thank you.
And then on page 37, we simply take the, we try and calculate the residential tax impact. And we do that by taking the current median home value, and then we then use what we calculate to be the projected debt assessment, and then Unibank Financial Advisors was able to use, based on the current tax rates, what the tax impact would be and the median tax impact per homeowner in each member town. This is what we've been presenting in our meetings. I wanted to share with the committee to keep the committee informed on some of the information that we've been providing local officials. If there are any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, oh, Dave.
It's just, over 7 years, I just keep seeing a non-resident enrollment in one proposal after another. And in this particular case, if we didn't have a majority of non-resident enrollment, is it fair to say that our costs would go down by 15% if we didn't have those 104 students?
No, I'm not following.
Proportionally,
Could you
104.
explain the basis of the 15% decrease?
Yeah, if you have 628 students and you take out 104, if you don't have non-resident enrollment, you don't have, because back here, if you don't have the $779,000 and you have 100 students, it's somewhere around $27,000, I think, per student. We're paying right now about $31,000 according to Chapter 7 and so forth. Why do we have 104 students, non-resident
It's
students?
just based on the assumptions that we made to where we expect to be by fiscal year 20.
So in order to fill the 628, you have to have 104
Based
by
on the model,
FY20.
based on the model that we're running, that's the assumption, that's correct.
And I would point out that the communities that those students are coming from have an obligation under Chapter 74 to provide that version of education to those students somewhere, if not here. Alice?
And I just want to say what a great value it is to the school to have the out-of-district students. And it adds greatly to the diversity of the school and makes it a more interesting place for the kids, actually. That's been my experience as a parent.
Gordon?
Notwithstanding that, we have 5 years before we're gonna be occupying this school. And as I said to town officials, what are you gonna do to help the enrollment? And what are we gonna do to help the enrollment? And I think by being positive, the school committee being positive, by our towns being positive, that will help increase the enrollment from our in-district students. I think the negativity has hurt tremendously. So I think one, being positive, I think two, the effort that the administration and the faculty and staff are going through now, hopefully, it is their hope that that will pay off. Also, when I look at a town like Arlington, it is forecasting 1,000 new students entering their district in the next 5 years. That also should increase. And I had a meeting today with a couple of selectmen from Arlington, and they verified that that should probably increase the students. And I asked at our last meeting, what are our towns like Belmont and other towns doing in terms of their projections, in terms of growth of students? It'll be interesting when they have that, if they don't already have it. I would hope that we probably, notwithstanding what Al said, not have any out-of-district students here. The object of this new building is for all in-district students. So I think it behooves each of us sitting at this table to work towards that goal and to do everything we can to tell people about Minuteman and the opportunities that are here for our students.
And finally, for my report, just on page 38, we have started our budget process. And the budget calendar is included, your review, similar to what we've done in years past, maybe pumping up a little bit early to give the finance subcommittee a little bit more time to take an early look at the presentations from the executive team and to look at different scenarios. But fully expect to have our public hearing on January 19th for the FY17 budget. That concludes my report.
Thanks.
We'll move on to Dave Horton, Superintendent Negotiations and Evaluation Subcommittee.
If you look in your packet on page 40, the goal statements and evaluation package that we reviewed, that the subcommittee reviewed, begins on page 1 for the next 4 pages. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. You may recall that we presented it at the last school committee meeting, so for the most, it has not changed a great deal since then. I just want to review a few items from it. Also, that Jennifer is a member of the committee, and Dave O'Connor, who's out of town on business. The goals reflect the major focuses of the superintendent during this fiscal year or this school year, which are the building project, the development of the Minuteman Academy model, and increasing in-district enrollment. And one of the focuses for the evaluation instrument and the process was to simplify it and make it clear and to follow a more standardized process aligned with the one in place to evaluate other administrators in the school. And I think I mentioned last month that Mary Ann Ham, who's supervisor evaluation of Minuteman, was really of enormous help to our subcommittee in writing and reviewing the goals, the 4 goals. So when the goals, following last month's school committee meeting, our subcommittee met and we reviewed the goal statements to see if they observed the criteria for SMART goals. And we made changes to, I believe, only to one goal, which was goal 4. And the goal reads as you see it on in your packet. And so we reviewed that. Next, we checked the rubric alignment of the standards and indicators. If you ever go online to look at the tons of pages of the evaluation process for all staff members, the evaluation instrument or the evaluation criteria, if you wish, or protocol, they're divided into, organized into standards and first into standards, 4 standards. And then under each standard, there are a number of indicators, and under each indicator, there are elements. And then for each element, there's a rubric for each of those elements to help you, to help the evaluator determine the level of performance of the particular person that's being evaluated. And I don't know if they, I think they're in our minutes, but they also show up, if you look at, for instance, page 40, for goal 1, you'll notice that for goal 1, we thought that there were elements, in other words, our subcommittee, that some elements fell under, that could be incorporated, or you could find them, or you could refer to them, or were related to, from the goal, from standard 3, family and community engagement, and standard 4, professional culture, but not all of the indicators or elements from those two goals. But since, so that the goal that Ed will be working on, in a sense, draws from or covers, it's like an umbrella that draws from those particular areas. Now, when it comes time for the school committee to evaluate the goals, you're not going to be asked to evaluate each element or indicator, because that would be impossible to do. Which is just a way of saying to you that, demonstrating that goals cover a lot of ground, and you don't necessarily have to choose just one element and one indicator to evaluate someone, but they cover a lot of ground. That's what this demonstrates. Dr. McQuillan will issue progress reports to the school committee by March 1st and by May 1st. And then, so we'll get a formative evaluation or update on progress by March 1st. And what's new in this whole process, not necessarily this year, but in the way it was drafted by DESE, we will have an opportunity to indicate a formative evaluation of the superintendent after we receive the March 4 report. We'll get these goals. Ed will provide us with as much information as he can that relate to the goals, and then we will actually evaluate it and then give it back to him. And if we see areas that are strengthened or where work needs to be done, he'll be able to understand that and be able to work on that, rather than just doing a summative in the end of the year and then letting the chips fall where they may, as it were. Although they could inform the evaluation for the following year. And just again, look, if you want to look at the next page, you'll notice that for each goal, there are strategies and action steps that are written for each one. And going down that page, there are resources from which, in this case, Ed will draw. And then, looking for evidence of accomplishment and benchmarks, he has written those for each of those goals too. So then what we would do is after May, by May 30th, the summative evaluation will be done, and after we've received the second project report, and then at probably the next meeting in June, we would vote on whether or not we recommend a contract renewal and a raise and that kind of, and that sort of thing. But that comes after we fill out the summative evaluation. Jen, did you want to add anything? No? Anyone have a question?
Alice, would you like a motion? There's no.
Yes, we do need to go for
Vote to approve. Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank
Yes,
you,
I
Alice.
move we approve the superintendent goals and educate annual plan for 2015-16.
We would.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Oh, just also to mention that our committee will, now that we've completed this particular piece, we will then get to work on working on the results and follow-through and follow-up from the school committee self-evaluation last year after we had the meeting with the workshop with Dorothy Presser. So we'll be meeting. We also have a little innovation we'd like to mention that was suggested by Jennifer, that we don't always meet here. Our subcommittee not always meet here. So we agreed that, basically me, because
It's only.
being a Lexington resident, that as long as Minuteman school personnel and staff are not needed at a particular meeting, we could meet closer to your Dave and Jennifer. Or anyone.
And it,
So I'll explore the Minuteman district as it were.
it still needs to be posted in a
Posted.
place accessible to the
That's
public
right.
and so
That was,
forth.
those were in our
The
minutes.
idea was to have it in Bolton with one of the.
Those are the criteria, that they have to be open to the public and in a public place, that we posted meetings, right? And Minuteman staff.
You're welcome to come to Bolton.
Well, it'd be good for me to see that, that part of Massachusetts.
Never been there.
Very nice.
That's it.
Okay, Ellis, on to policies.
Policies, we're in the age of minutia. I was thinking about the aging, the dark ages, and historians like to say that the people who were living in the dark ages didn't know they were the dark ages. So I'm kind of wondering what ages we're in now.
That's key.
So DJ, we're revisiting some policies that we had voted at the school committee to approve for first reading in July. Then they got sidetracked over to the finance subcommittee for a second review, and they're back. So DJ purchasing, I'll take a motion to approve DJ purchasing for a second reading. So
Second.
there's the second. Okay, so on page 45, the existing current policy is written down. And on page 46 and 47, you see the red line copy, all the changes that were made. And you recall that the really interesting features of this new revision relate to the change from $25,000 to $35,000 or more. That was one of the most important changes. And the designation of the chief procurement officer, in this case the assistant superintendent of finance, as the person who is carrying out the duties of the district relevant to acquisition of supply insurance. Obviously, it's not the school committee that's actually doing that, it's actually Kevin. So, are there any questions about this policy?
Any questions at all? Okay,
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion on the table?
anyone opposed? And any abstentions? I think we up on abstention? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
moving on.
Next one is DJE bidding requirements for second reading. So the original policy, page 48, and the revisions on page 49. This is another one that went back, was approved for first reading, and then has gone back round and will come back to you again and again. This has to do with the dollar value, changing from 24,000 to 35,000, and designating Kevin as the person responsible for these bidding requirements. Any questions on this one?
Was there even a motion?
I'll move it.
And second? Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Anyone abstaining?
Okay, now this next one is new. So DEA is gifts, grants, donations, and scholarships. And on page 50, 51, and 52 is the one that's extant, and that is actually adopted in 2009. And the revisions are followed. And the thing that you're going to notice about this one, if you've been spending time studying with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, is that this is all about procedures, where we're supposed warning you not to be micromanaging and getting involved in procedures. But this one actually has to have procedures because we're required to adopt procedures. So, that's what we dug down into in the finance subcommittee a couple of weeks ago. And Kevin may remember which exact rule requires the procedures to be adopted by the school committee. I don't recall which one it is. So if you want to take a look at this and ask any questions you might have, fire away.
Make a
Get a
motion to
motion.
approve.
And second, somebody?
I'll second.
No questions? Do we still have a quorum? Okay, good. Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? And no one left to abstain, I'm guessing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of my job. Thank you very much.
Secretary's report, and back to Dave Horton. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Actually, I do not have a formal report, except I do just want to say, after attending the General Advisory Board meeting, it was the first one that I had attended, and it just was a very impressive group of people filling this room with lots of enthusiasm for the school and for the students. Several members of the faculty gave reports and, as always, were very professional and impressive in what they're doing, both in marrying the, education and vocational aspects of the program. So, it was a real treat for me to be able to attend.
Thank you.
That's it.
Sorry,
That's
I put my
okay.
glasses on and off and don't see what I'm supposed to see right in
Just a
front of
point
me.
of information, we're having our annual appreciation dinner tomorrow night, and Lieutenant Governor is attending.
Okay, now, Secretary's report. Dave?
I move that we approve the past minutes of September 8th as presented.
Where's the second?
Anyone have any comment from me?
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Oops.
I meant to say that. Okay, I was reading.
I think that was everybody voting in favor. Okay.
I move that the minutes of September 15th be approved as presented. I'd just like to mention, Jack, that the question from Dave is really answered on page 65. It's included in the minutes. It describes those 31 new students, quote, the new transfers to the 10th and 11th grade. They're part of the record. Any comment or question? Okay.
All in favor? And again, nobody left to oppose or abstain.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to enter an executive session now.
Liz has
I'm just wondering, was there a reason why you skipped over item 3A?
3A. Oh, no, there isn't, thank you very much. Going back to item 3A, I am told that Sharon is the only member of the school committee who is planning to attend the MASC meeting on November 4th, and therefore we should delegate her authority as our official delegate.
I moved to make sure.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
On this topic, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Could we ask the delegate to suggest to the MASC that they can consider moving their meeting from Hyannis to somewhere centrally located, such as Worcester, or anywhere that isn't Hyannis?
Yeah.
So more central location.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It is, because I personally have been tempted to go, but in a place where I can't reasonably get there and back in one day to drop into part of it, it just isn't gonna happen.
Right, 150 miles.
Yeah, I can.
And I know some other statewide organizations that do focus on Worcester and Springfield as a central location.
If it's right on 495, it's easy enough.
It is. I even know some people who come from the islands to Worcester for statewide meetings. Because they can get the ferry to Hyannis. Okay, all right, thank you, Liz.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
this is not on the agenda, but it was in the packet. Can I make a comment on an item that was in the packet?
I suppose so.
This is on the Dover letter, and I think probably most of you read the Dover letter, and I just want to congratulate the Dover selectmen for their forethought on how they've handled this, and their decision that based on the agreement, the original agreement not being changed, and the position that we're all in, that they are supporting moving towards a building project, a new building project, and I just think that's the kind of attitude, the kind of thought that happens in Dover, but I'd like to see that happen in all of our communities, because they recognize that that's the least expensive route. It's the best route for our kids, our future kids that are coming to Minuteman. They recognize the value of Minuteman. So I just publicly want to applaud the selectmen and Bill.
Yes, I felt the same way. It was a great position.
Liz, maybe you can preface that by returning to the building committee topic. Because I think that appropriately falls under the building committee report, even though it didn't come up at that point. I don't want to say we've given them time to talk about something that wasn't on the agenda. Okay, now back to my agenda. And we will move to, or I'm looking for a motion to move to executive session pursuant to Purpose 6 MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraph 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And so the chair declares. I think we can do it with one motion for both. And the second purpose would be to approve past executive session minutes pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 22F, to review, amend, finalize, and approve minutes from the past executive session held on July 7, 2015, and to determine whether continued non-disclosure of such minutes is appropriate, not to return to open session. And staff, Liz, Ed, and Kevin, they remain present. Is that right?
Yeah, Jack can stay if you want.
Would you like to stay, Jack?
Sure.
Okay, then the
Sorry.
motion
Return to open or not?
not to return to open session. Okay, I need,
It'll be quick.